And I would ask everyone, please indicate your experience with the Editors Canada online directory of editors. I'll be closing the polling very soon. All right, I'm going to end the poll. Now, before I share the results, I'd like to introduce today's presenter. It's Greg Uwata, and he is a professional editor who heads up a publishing company and a crowdfunding site. Greg is also the past president of Editors Canada. He's based in Toronto. So, Greg, here are the results from the poll.
Okay, thanks, Trish. Part of why I wanted to start with these questions was the first few slides tell people how to set up a directory entry and point out a few things about the directory. If everyone already had one, I was going to skip that, but with it being almost exactly 50-50, I guess I won't split it. So at this point, let's switch to my screen.
Okay.
Share screen. Are you working? Please work. Yay! Okay, success. So, first part of having an ODE listing is setting up the listing. So half of you can tune out for about 2 or 3 minutes here. I'm just going to skip through this fairly quickly. When you sign in as a member, you go to the My Account screen, and there's a link to editing your directory entry. And as some of you will remember, it asks you interesting questions like your website address, your phone, what country you live in, and so on. That's the first part of it. The key part is actually the second chunk. Almost all of what I'm going to be talking about today is about the profile section, because that's the part where you can really make yourself visible or invisible. So that's the chunk in the middle. At the bottom, there are a whole batch of what used to be pull-down menus. They're now options that you can accept or delete. Unfortunately, the site is currently programmed for gray on gray on gray, and some of this isn't going to show too well. But you can add things or delete things down in this section. And here I'm showing you the subjects area and what it looks like as you add and delete. So you can see, if you're lucky, it says down near the bottom, Business, Canada, Central and South America. The ones that are grayed out are the ones that I've selected as subject areas I work in. The ones I haven't are the ones that appear in darker gray. You'll notice how few options there are. This was programmed not quite pre-Google, but when Google was in its really early days. It was based on the assumption that everyone would use the search engine within the ODE. And that assumption has turned out to be wildly false. But for now, we're stuck with programming that is based on that assumption. So one of the subject areas that I like to promote that I've worked in is cannibalism. And you'll note that cannibalism isn't one of the options there. So I've had to put it in my profile. What happens when you have a directory entry and someone searches for your name, if they search within the directory itself, it comes up like this. About the first 200 characters or so are displayed when someone finds you on the website. So if you go to the people whose names start with I, you see me down the bottom there. And what appears are the first, actually 240-something characters of my profile. I provide a complete range of services for self-publishing authors, including editing, crowdfunding, printing, and distribution, like everything. That's carefully written so that it stands as a complete elevator pitch. There's no getting rid of the 3 dots at the end of it unless you make your entire entry only a couple of hundred characters, which you don't want to do. So you try and make it work so that those 3 dots actually make a certain sense. So the first thing is to make yourself distinctive and to really think, okay, which audience am I addressing? What kind of client am I trying to attract? And what's going to catch their attention? At the moment, I'm particularly going after self-publishing authors, so that, that first little chunk of text is aimed specifically at them. When the ODE was first programmed, the only way to really access it was through the program itself, through the website itself. These days, most of the people who see your directory listing are going to have found it through Google. And the same thing applies there. Here's what my entry looks like on Google. You'll see it's just a couple of characters longer. So instead of ending like everything, it now adds the next 4 words. It doesn't quite make as much sense as it does standalone on the editor's website, but it's still, it's a clear description of what I do. Once you've drafted your entry, look at it, look at yourself on Google, see what it looks like. It almost certainly will be the first thing that comes up. And look at yourself on the website itself. See how effective it is as a sales pitch. For most people seeing your entry, that's all they're going to see. If they click through, you're making your second impression. So the rest of the text should be interesting. You're competing with 500 editors who have some approximation of your skill set. Try and make yourself stand out a little. Try and give some indication of your particular skills, your personality, and make sure it's well edited. Deluge of emails from friends saying, looks great, but, and they pointed out about 6 typos that we had missed. Even though I'd had one of the people in my office check it over, this thing will be seen, a lot of the people who see it are editors. And if they're seeing editing mistakes or clumsy writing or something like that in your directory entry, you're not going to get work from it. So run it by some friends. Finally, some research indicates that the most effective way of generating sales is to include testimonials. I don't have testimonials on mine. A lot of the more effective entries do. So here's an example of what I think is a really effective entry. This was actually selected by someone else in my office. She's one of my former students and she used to work here, but that's sort of neither here nor there. Notice that the first part is really clear. I'm a copy editor and proofreader who specializes in scientific and technical subjects. So immediately she's defined the kinds of projects she's looking for, who her target customer is. Talks about her degree in biology and all that stuff. And then it ends with 3 effective testimonials. This is perfect, thank you. Anne is an essential member of our team. So it really gives you an idea of who she is, what she does, what she's good at, her background, and indicates that people have really liked working with her. Another one that's really effective, Sarah's doesn't include testimonials. But again, I'm an experienced marketing communications professional who will always be a writer and editor at heart. I specialize in business writing and online content strategy and dabble in everything else. That's her elevator pitch. And then again, it goes into her background. Okay, questions to that point? I'm not seeing any. So most of the people who find your listing are not doing it through our website. They're doing it through Google or another certain. Oh, there are a couple questions. Hang on. Let me check out the questions. Okay, your Google entry and ODE don't quite match. It updates fairly frequently. So it might be your cache. It might be just Google hasn't it hasn't updated recently enough. It updates pretty quickly, so I wouldn't really worry about it. if you have testimonials on your website, would you reproduce them on your ODE listing? I would try and make them not the same. Assume that some people are going to go to the website and not want to see exactly the same content. We're actually going to get to that later if I remember to. Okay, so think of search engine optimization. So let's assume you know some of the basics of SEO. Why are you not clicking down? So use niche terms. A lot of people, remember, people are pulling from those lists of skills, those lists of subjects. And so it will say, for instance, I thought I had an example there. Okay. If you search for legal, if you want an editor who can edit law or who can edit legal documents, if you search for legal, which is the term in the preset list, you get 21 matches. So anyone who is in that list of people has 21 competitors. If you search for law, you get fewer. If you search for legal, you get even fewer than that. For lawyer, you get even fewer than that. So you get Karen Cather, who's the only person who has that word in her directory listing. The more you can own keywords, the more you can be the only person in the directory or one of few people in the directory that has a word, the more likely you are to come up as the only person or one of a very few people that people find. For quite a while, I was the only one in the directory who listed rewriting, and quite a lot of the work I got from the directory was rewriting work. Okay, so I made a joke about cannibalism, but it's not really a joke. I've had, about 15 years ago, there was a cannibalism case in Hamilton, Ontario, and I got to edit 3 books about the case. So for a while, I genuinely did have cannibalism as a subject specialty. And what happened once I put that in my listing was people would see that and call and say, why do you have cannibalism in your listing? Ha, 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 do you do cookbooks? I've probably had as many calls from having cannibalism in my directory entry as all the other words combined. So if you can do something like that that makes yourself distinctive, that almost certainly no one else is going to have. Recently, when I was looking for an editor, I was looking for someone who could edit in Portuguese. The time before that, I was looking for someone with experience in knitting. Look for really niche words that probably few people have. Okay, so questions about that? Okay.
No.
Okay, not seeing any. Think of how you look on Google. So Google yourself, or Google your name plus editor and see how you come up. A key point, Google refreshes really frequently. And if it sees a page that hasn't been changed in weeks or months or years, it will see it as a dead page. I have a list of authors I've worked with at the end of my listing. And every time I remember to do so, I delete one of them and put someone else in. Or I just, add a comma somewhere or take a comma out somewhere or something trivial, something that doesn't really unedit the page or break it, just so that Google will see it as a fresh page. And then when I save it, it's a new page and it goes higher up the rankings just for being a fresh page. So just refresh it as often as you can so Google knows that you're still a living person. Okay, so don't let friends put silly pictures of you on the internet. Here's why I'm saying that. So here's my page. And first thing that comes up when you search for me is my directory listing, and that will be true of a lot of us. Then it comes up with LinkedIn, even better. So, the first 2 things that come up are really professional. Third one is my company. Fourth one is my Facebook. Fifth one is Dundurn Press because I published a book there as an author. Then comes Twitter. Then comes something called A Conversation with EAC. that is a friend of mine putting me on their blog. She just did a quick interview, put it on the blog, and it helps sort of flesh out that first page. Then you get to the bottom half of my first page. The next thing people see is 6 photos of me. There's one from Facebook, there's one from my webpage, and so on. They all look sensible until you get to that last one. This one is actually from the Editors Association's own Flickr account. It's a stupid photo of me taken at some conference at some point. When I get to it, I'm going to add another photo anywhere, link to it all over the place, so I can bump that one out of 6th place so that people don't, whenever they look for me, come up with that. The other 2 entries on the first page of my Google page are also 2 people who put me on their blogs. So it's easy to do. It's a favor you can exchange with people. The more sensible, professional-looking stuff you have on the first page, the more credible you look. And it's the sort of thing that we can do for each other. The other thing that gets something onto your first page of Google is if there are cross-links. So my Twitter account links to my LinkedIn and my Facebook, and so on and so on. By definition, your directory entry level will link to various things. It links to your website, it links to your email address, and so on. The more links there are, the more cross-links, the more credible things are. But really think of your directory entry as simply the first thing people are likely to see when they Google you. If someone thinks you look interesting, wants to consider hiring you, they're probably going to Google you. So you really want that impression to be as solid as possible. Okay, so working with Google, we talked about search engine optimization. Where I started in doing my directory entry was generating a list of the keywords and key phrases that I wanted in my description. And then I tried to write a profile that used as many of those keywords, key phrases as possible, but in a really natural way. I'm not sort of spamming with a keyword list. In talking about myself and my work, I made sure I touched as many of those keywords as possible. So the way I did it, Coburn Communications, a writing and editing company, works on a wide range of publications, websites, books, board games, government reports, pretty much everything. So that's a list. It almost is a keyword spam, but the pretty much everything makes it more colloquial. And then later it talks about market research, it talks about plain language and so on, but it's all part of a narrative. It's not like I'm forcing people to read through a list. I'm trying to tell them a story. Each of us has a different story. You're not going to be someone like me who's stupidly started 4 different companies. Tell your own story, but in that story, make sure you're telling people exactly what you do. Look to see what other people have done. Steal each other's ideas. Look to see what other people haven't done. Look to see, search the directory for keywords. Look for ones that other people haven't used. Try and find things that are going to be distinctive for yourself. Look to see what entries other people have done that impress you, that attract you. Don't make assumptions about what people are looking for. There are an awful lot of projects out there that simply need a beginner or someone who's recently graduated to do a simple proofreading job or something boring, possibly something cheap. Don't assume they're only looking for people with years and years of experience. There is at least as much work for beginners as for experienced people. Just tell your story as openly and fully as you can. And what I was just talking about with Google, build an online presence. Don't focus on using one tool. In real life, I use Facebook all the time and other things occasionally. But I do touch base with all of them occasionally just so that the accounts stay live, the links stay live, there is some activity. Okay, we got some questions. You can mention the editor's profile in your bio on. The question is, can you use Facebook or Twitter to link to your profile? Mention you're an association member. It's easier on Facebook because you get a whole lot more characters. Join the Facebook group, then Google will see that you're associated. Occasionally search for the EAC hashtag. Just interact. Is it always appropriate to name clients in a profile? I'm not sure whether all of my clients would want the world to know that they hired an editor. No, it's not always appropriate, and some clients specifically forbid it. What I do if I'm going to give someone name someone is I check with them. I let them see what the testimonial looks like before it goes live, and sometimes they just say no. Some of the larger publishers in Toronto won't let people use them as testimonials, and so be it. The side effect of that is it's a really good excuse to touch base with a former client. Hi, you said really nice things about my work. I'm thinking of using that as a testimonial on my website or on the editor's directory. Is that okay with you? And fairly often the conversation goes along the lines of, what are you up to? What are you doing? And it can, just making that call can generate work itself. So it's a good reason to be contacting someone. And then, you put the testimonial up and show it to them ahead of time. Again, you've made a contact that's not just, hi, I'm Greg, I'm looking for work, help. It's a real conversation. Why are you doing that? Okay, so one of the things that the website should have, and is disabled at the moment, is that link there, view statistics. And when that's working, it's really valuable because it shows you what keywords people use to get to your web page. That's how I know that half the people who found me through searching for editor cannibalism or something like that. And practically no one found me looking for a copy editor. So it'll let you know which keywords are working and which ones aren't. So you can tweak, drop the ones that aren't working, try new ones, just use the feedback. I don't know when the stats are going to be live again. The answer last time I asked was soon. You got another question? Yeah. I don't know what badges are. I guess it's a volunteer thing that the association is using. Do I have badges? Hang on. Oh, okay. That's from the volunteer committee. It's ways that I've volunteered in the association in the last few years. Wow, I really got to scale back. That's crazy. Okay, so that's the formal part of the webinar. So are there questions? Are there more questions? How are we doing for time? We actually have reached what was supposed to be the end time, but the next one doesn't start for another 12 minutes.
Yeah, so we have time for a few more questions, I think.
Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. I'll watch for them. I'm expecting that some of you are hearing this webinar and thinking, oh God, I don't want to do that. That's horrible. If so, you might want to take a listen to the webinar I gave last month on rethinking your career. This is part of being a freelance editor, all the promotional stuff. Most of the promotion these days is being done online. If that's not for you, there are other options, and maybe it's time for a rethink. Do I put my charge on my profile? Absolutely never. What I charge for most things is dependent on a whole batch of variables, and it's never just a flat, X dollars per 1,000 words or something like that. It's partly, is this something I really want to do? How hungry am I for work? What kind of traffic does ODE see in a month? I don't know. I know I get a contact about once a week from my profile. Last time I checked the stats when they were still live, I had about 400 referrals. So my name had come up about 400 times in internal searches. Which keywords were used to make my name come up? The two keywords that find me the most often are cannibalism and iguana, which is the name of one of my companies. It's really random. So that's why I'm suggesting just try things and see what works. The blurb on Google is picking up the first couple of hundred characters of your profile. So that's where you can tinker. It's automatic. You don't have control over it through Google. You do have control over it through editing your profile. In your description, how do you balance between distinguishing yourself with your specialized knowledge and showing all the things you can do? The specialized knowledge is to attract people to actually look at my page. The page tells people who I am and what I do. So it's really just a come on to get people to read further. Is there a group of editors willing to evaluate each other's listings? I would organize something like that through the members list, through the EAC Facebook page. It should be fairly easy to put together. If you put a typo in your entry, you'll hear about it pretty quickly. For an editor who isn't aiming to work with self-published authors, do you recommend creating? Yeah. In the early 2000s, I was really going after corporate work, and that was the pitch. And for years, I was getting calls from project management companies, from various corporations. It really depends who you're trying to attract as a customer. So if you remember the samples I used, Anne Godlewski was really looking for scientific editing. So she's going to get academics, she's going to get science-based companies calling and so on. You start by thinking what kind of client you're trying to attract, and you write that introduction to your profile specifically talking to them. And as they scan the list of editors, that by itself will attract them. Why do I want to work with self-publishing authors? Because that's where most of the work is these days. And to a large extent, remember, I also offer crowdfunding, which is something none of the rest of you likely do. So I can help them actually pay for the service properly. So it's where I've headed. Okay, we have run out of time, so thank you all very much.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much for participating today. I'm sure you found it interesting and helpful. And we'll stay on the line just a couple more minutes, just in case there are any final questions. Thank you very much on behalf of Editors Canada.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I'll stay on and answer questions for a while. A short while, because then this starts again in 8 minutes.
Yeah, I think it's mostly accolades, Greg.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to switch to the other page then.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.